Okay, Rabbi Yossi, we're learning Tanya. We're Perek Ches, chapter 18. This is our third class on Perek Ches. What are we learning? That if a person is incapable of Moyach Shalta Lalev, a person cannot be a Beinani using the tools, the methods of Moyach Shalta Lalev. Why not? He doesn't have them. Doesn't have a Moyach. Doesn't have a Lev. He doesn't have a bridge between a Moyach and a Lev. If a person doesn't have the intelligence and the concentration and the ability to feel, and so he can be a Beinani is somebody who controls himself, is a master over self. To be a master over self, you need tools. If a person doesn't have the intellectual and emotional tools, how are they supposed to be a master over self? So Perek Ches, chapter 18, begins with addressing this question. And the way the Alter Rebbe addresses this question is by introducing us to something called Ahava Misuteres. Ahava Misuteres means a hidden love. And this is what we're going to be learning for the foreseeable future, in the short term and also in a longer term. This is going to be the next 2 prakim, and a bigger picture, the next 8 prakim, is going to be a discussion on Ahava Misuteres. What's a hidden love? A hidden love is a strange phenomenon. If I love, I feel. If I don't feel, how do I love? And of course the answer is, some loves are in the person's nature, they're in the teva. One of the mishalim for a hidden love is a love between a brother and a sister. A love between a parent and a child, you hope, is revealed, is overt. A brother and a sister are the same essence, they come from the same source. So the love for one another is a love which has to do with their very deepest levels. But it's conceivable that it's concealed. Ahava Misuteres means a Jew has a hidden love for Hashem. A Yid has a hidden love for the Eibishter, which is buried in the Neshama. And the Alter Rebbe says, if you don't have the skill, the tools, for Moyach Shalta Lalev, that means for achieving Beinani, which means mastery over self, using the revealed faculties, the human faculties, the mind, the heart, the senses. So there's another option. This second option, as we discussed it over the last few classes, is called the short way, right? In the introduction to the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe writes that he's writing a book to explain one pasuk, in a long, short way. So we discussed this 2 weeks ago, the last time we had a class, two Sundays ago, the one we learned. I forgot if it's 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It was the first class on this Perek. That a long, short way is understood to mean that there are 2 methods. There's a long method and there's a shorter method. The difference between the long method and the shorter method is that the long method is called long and short, meaning to say it takes a long time to get to it. But when you get to it, it's transforming. You become a new person. So it's easier to stay in that space. The short method is called the short-long method. It's quicker to get to, but it's harder to stay there. So you have to constantly go back. So the Moyach Shalta Lalev method, the idea of being a Beinani, of using the mind and the heart, is long and short. It takes a very long time to reach this kind of condition of self-mastery, of self-control. But when it's achieved, you become a different person. Now we're talking about something different. You're not creating a new person out of yourself. You're not working to refine yourself. You're just revealing. None of this is easy. The word just doesn't belong in any of these sentences. But you're accessing the connection you have with Hashem, which is inside the Neshama, which you didn't put there. Hashem planted there. So it's quicker to get to, but it's harder to hold on to. So we call it short and long. So last week we second class, same subject, and we finished last week's class with 4 questions. And we're going to proceed to answer these 4 questions. Now, yesterday was Shabbos, and it's after Pesach, so we learn Pirkei Avos. And in the 5th Perek of Pirkei Avos, you have Shiva Dvarim B'Chacham, Shiva Dvarim B'Geilam, Shiva B'Chacham. There are 7 things about a Goylam. What does the word Goylam mean? A Goylam means an unformed entity. Clay, before you make it into a kli, is called a goylam. Goylam means a human being is underdeveloped. That's what attached goylam, a klotz. We use the Hebrew word goylam as a noun to represent somebody who's who's a bumbling idiot. Yeah, but goylem doesn't have to be to such an extent. Goylem means raw. That's what it means. Untwickelt. Anything which is underdeveloped is a goylem. A human being is born. He has eyes and he has ears. He has a nose. He has a mouth. He has a heart. He has lungs. But his humanity is a goylem. It's raw. You have to refine your character. You have to develop your mind. You have to develop your senses. An undeveloped person is a goylem. So the Mishnah begins, Shiva Dvarim B'Goylem. There are 7 things that are a constant in underdeveloped people. They interrupt each other. They don't say the truth. When they're not sure, they tell you as if they're certain. 7 midas, right? But the Mishnah doesn't tell us Shiva Dvarim B'Goylem. The Mishnah tells us Shiva Dvarim B'Goylem. You have to know there's 7 things about a person that's in the category of a goylem, antwickelt, undeveloped. V'shiva b'chacham, and then there are 7 midas by a chacham, and obviously, relatively speaking, a chacham means a person who is developed, who's worked on him or herself and taken on a character which is finer, which is intelligent, which is wise. And then the Mishnah tells you chacham. The Mishnah lists the 7 characteristics of chacham. I forgot all of them. I don't know the Mishnah by heart. He doesn't interrupt his friend. She'el ke'inyan. He asks contextual questions, not meaning questions. Meishiv ka'alacha. When he answers you, he gives you an answer which is useful, not just an answer that you leave it alone, right? When you ask him 2 questions, he answers the first one first, the second one second. If he didn't hear something, he says, I don't know. He's able to admit and tell the truth. And the Mishnah finishes by goylem. All of these midas backwards. Right? There's 7 midas of a chacham, 7 midas of goylem. These mishnayos in Pirkei Avos are saying simple things that are painfully simple because they're so accurate. But one of them is if you ask him more than one question, he answers the questions in the order in which they were asked. In Chumash, the example is Rivka. Rivka is asked 2 questions by Eliezer in Pashas Ki Chaisara. Do you have a place for us to sleep? And do you have food for the animals? And she answers the questions. The first question she answers first, the second question answers second. We find in Torah cases where you ask several questions and you answer them in reverse. You answer the last question first and then the first question second, which is inconsistent with the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Now, I'm not raising questions, I'm just pointing things out. Here is a case, we have 4 questions, and we're not going to answer Arishan, Rishon, Malach, and Nachan. The questions are not going to be answered in the order in which they asked. So where's the Chochmah? Alter Rebbe Mistami, you consider him a Chacham, yeah? Where's the Chochmah if you ask 4 questions and you don't answer them in order? And the answer is the Alter Rebbe asks the 4 questions in the order of the ideas. And he answers the 4 questions in the order of their brevity. Meaning, the question that he can answer the most quickly, he answers first. The question which takes the longest, he answers last. Not mamish, but more or less, okay? So I am now going to tell you what the 4 questions are, and we're going to proceed to answer them. By you it says lahagdim or lavayid. By me it says lavayid or lahagdim. We have to clarify, prefacing, tchila first, Beit Hayt explaining well. 4 questions. Number 1, sheidish ahavazu. This idea that a Jew has a love for Hashem which is called hidden, a hidden love for the Eibishter. Where does this come from? Okay, now I'm going to tell you the answer because I'm a nudnik. The answer is Chochmah. What that means, you'll have to stick around for. In Yana, what is this Ahava? This second question is going to dominate the next 2 parakim. It's going to take up most of Perek Yud Ches and a substantial portion of the second half, most of Perek Yud Tes of the next Perek, and quite a bit of the end of our Perek. The third question is Eichi Yerusha Lonu, how is it inherited? And the 4th question is Eich Nichel B'Agam Dechila, how does it include also fear? There's an argument made in a Zohar, which is quoted in Tanya chapter 40, a long time from now, that a bird cannot fly without 2 wings. Right? Birds are not rockets. Right? There's a different system of propulsion, of motion. In order for a bird to fly, it has to use 2 wings. Right? And if you're familiar with the Tanakh, you know that the same word that is used for flying is used for swimming, because it's really the same It's the same mechanics. Swimming through water and swimming through air is the same principle. With one wing you cannot fly. And in Ruchnias, these two wings are Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, love of God and fear of God. You cannot fly. You can't serve Hashem in a light way, in a living way, which is what flying represents, unless you combine love and fear. Love alone is not enough. Fear alone is not. Fear gets depressing, and love becomes self-indulgent. If you do only what you love, so then it really is rooted in you. If you only do or don't do because of what you fear, it becomes very negative. It becomes very gewurdet. You need a balance. So we're talking about a hidden love. So the Alter Rebbe says, where in this hidden love is there fear? Because if it only has love, it's not going to work correctly. So the four questions are, Shreidish Avazu, where does it come from in the Nefesh? And the answer is Chochmah. In Yana, what is this love? And the answer is that a Yid is one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu without having to do anything. It's just born that way. Shreidish Avazu, how did we inherit from our ancestors? We're going to talk about it in a moment. And the fourth question, how does this include fear? This is going to be answered last, on page 50, the end of the Perikei Tes. In other words, the Alter Rebbe asks four questions, and he answers them in the order of, if you would be in my class, I put this on my test, 3, 1, 2, 4. That's the answer. He answers the third question first, because it takes him a few lines. He answers the second question, the first question second, because that takes about a page. He answers the second question third, because that takes the bulk of the discussion. And he answers the fourth question last, because it's a detail. It's not part of the core issue. It's an ancillary idea. So the Alter Rebbe leaves it for last. Now, it's still a question. If you ask four questions, why can't you answer them in order? But we'll leave that for Mevinim. We're not Mevinim. We're Pashat Yidden. We're going to learn. So the four questions are: number one, Sheidish Hahavazu. How do you inherit love? So the Alter Rebbe answers. In the teretz is, Ha'aves hein hein amar kava. We didn't inherit. The Aves inherited to us. Right? We know the halachas of Yerusha. We know the laws of inheritance. The laws of inheritance in Torah are considered deep. Now, there's a rule in halacha that kol tnai shebemomen, if the Torah gives you stipulations about finances, you don't have to keep them. There's a klal, tnai shebemomen. If the Torah gives you rules about how to distribute wealth or how to handle wealth, if you choose to, if both parties agree, they don't have to follow the Torah. With a rare exception, and the rare exception is nachlas. You're not supposed to change the halachas of Yerusha. Yerusha is considered, it's a business thing. It's children inheriting parents. It's the one case, and there's nafka minas ladina, where the Torah says you're allowed to. Technically, you're allowed to. You can do whatever you want. One of the ways of redistributing your wealth in a way which is not consistent with the halachas of Yerusha is you give it away as a gift when you're still alive. But Torah doesn't want you to change the halachas of nachlas because there's something deep about it. And the concept is the heir, the child that inherits, is not considered taking from the parent. He's considered the continuation of the parent. And again, this has a lot of spiritual value and significance. Somebody passes away, he leaves an estate. It's not the pshat that went over from a father to a child. It's the same reshus. It's a continuation. It's the same genes. It's the same person in a different goof. That's how it's understood in Torah. And like I said before, there's halachic ramifications from all of these things. But one thing is true. A child can stand in his father's place and inherit his estate. But a child can't stand in his father's place and inherit his moods. His moods, his feelings. A child cannot stand in his father's place. If his father has a like or a dislike, it doesn't mean the child is going to inherit those things. Why? True, spiritually the child stands in the same place as the father, but psychologically they're two people. There was a Gadol B'Yisrael in America who had an issue with the Rabbeim. When he passed away and his son succeeded him, he said in Yiddish, you don't have to inherit your father's emotions. My father has these feelings. I don't have to share those feelings. Here you have a case where Torah says you inherit an emotion. My father loves God, I love God. Really? It doesn't work that way. This is the question. Normally, Avas Hashem, love and fear of God are personal. As it in Tanya, and the mitzvahs, we do the same, physical mitzvahs. But spiritual involvement with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whether it's mind or heart or senses, is personal, it's individual. I don't have a relationship with God because my father did. Maybe we do the same mitzvahs, but feelings, mind, and heart are very distinctive. They're unique. Each person is different.
It's a gift. It's a gift that gives us courage.
So this is the Alter Rebbe wants to articulate the process of this gift. The shaila is how. How is it that because Avraham loved Hashem, I love Hashem? So the Alter Rebbe answers. I'm reading it inside. Ha'aves hein hein amerkava. The patriarchs and matriarchs were a chariot for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the meaning of a chariot is that they served him so wholly, so completely, with such subservience that there was nothing about their lives that was outside of that service. We're going to talk about Merkava later on in chapter 23, which is going to be Mitzvah Hashem, Tafshin Pei Beis, in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi at our pace. But in 23, we're going to learn about Merkava, and there I'm going to explain it at length, because over there it's going to be more important. But Merkava is like a car. We know two things about a car. Cars can get you from point A to point B a lot quicker than you can get yourself using your legs. But there's something else you have to know about a car. Cars have no will. They're hunks of plastic and metal. That's it. So the relationship between a roichev and a merkava, a rider, and a chariot is helpful to the rider, but he's so subservient that he has nothing will of his own. When you call the office of the Yibba, you say, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov were merkava. They were a chariot for Lakuth. You're saying two things. Number one, and however this is understood is another discussion, but this is the statement. Hashem needs them to bring him into this world. They're a chariot. They carry the Eibishter into this world. And Kvayachal, so to speak, if not for these chariots bringing the Eibishter into the world, again, however you understand the philosophy of this, he wouldn't be here. But on the other hand, the chariot is so subservient that they have no will other than the will of he who is driving the chariot, the will of HaKadosh Baruch. So the idea, this is a Lashon of Chazal. Ha'avis heinem HaKadosh, it's a question of Chazal. It's a medrash. That the Avis are a chariot for Hashem. The two sides of this are is that the Kvayachal doing something for Hashem that Hashem cannot do for himself. But it's such a degree of dedication, it's such a measure of sacrifice that there is nothing outside of it. There's no aspect of what the Avis did which is not included in the Merkava. You know, there's a story with the Baran Kalinet and the Mizitcha Magid. It says in Svarim that when the Avis slept, they were serving Hashem. When the Avis ate, they were serving Hashem. When the Avis laughed, they were serving Hashem. And there's a story with the Mizitcha Magid which supports it. I heard this as a child, and I read it as an adult, that the Mizritcher Magid had a minig, as all Mukumbalim do, that Friday afternoon he would take a nap. The sleep out of Shabbos is a Kabbalistic thing. It has to do with the concept of the Mita out of Shabbos. There's a heavenly concept of sleep. In the Potato Shalom it says that the Alter Rebbe fakt einschlafen und der Bilul fakt sich legen schlafen. The Bilul Pasch would put himself to sleep out of Shabbos. And the Alter Rebbe would fall asleep because it was in the Madrega of Merkava. In Tefillin. He would fall asleep with his Tefillin. The Alter Rebbe would Tefillin the whole day. In any case, so in Mizrich, there was a Talmud, the Holy Maggid, his name was Rabbi Nagodl Mikarlin. The Baran Nagodl. He's the first patriarch of what's now called Stolin, Karlin Stolin. He was a big tzaddik. He was a Talmud of the Maggid, and he's famous for his Bali Tshuva. They say he made many Bali Tshuva. The Baran Kalina. The Baran Kalina was sitting in Bismedish, was sitting in the shul in Mezrich, saying Shir Hashir on Friday afternoon. The Mezritcher Maggid was trying to take a nap and he couldn't sleep, so he called in his shamus. He said, "Go into the shul and tell Aaron he should stop saying Shir Hashirim because I can't sleep." The Aaron Kalina is sitting in shul and saying Shir Hashirim, and the Maggid can't sleep because the Aaron Agod Shir Hashirim is turning the worlds upside down, and the Maggid can't sleep. So in the Lashon Hashas, Shma Minot Las, you learn from this three things. Number one, you learn that Shir Hashirim is a big deal. Number two, that the Aaron Agod Shir Hashirim makes a rash to all of us al Yenim. The Aaron Agod Shir Hashirim is heard in all the higher worlds. And number three, the Mizritcher Maggid sleep is more important than the Aaron Agod Shir Hashirim. Farvos. Because there are some Yidden of Madrega of Merkava. The Alter Rebbe said about his Rebbe, about the Maggid. I think he said, I swear, that he didn't move his finger unless it was decreed on high that he should move it. Every single action that he took was in the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, including sleeping and eating. People like us can't understand this at all. But this is the Madrega of the Ovis. In Merkava, every single Tnuah of their lives was in the service of their Maker. So the Rebbe continues. Ve'al kein zachu, they merit it. Lahamshich, to bring down nefesh, ruach, neshama. And again, in the world of Tanya, it's not nefesh and ruach and neshama. It's nefesh or ruach or neshama. I've told this to you many times. In chapter 2, I spent a lot of time talking about this. That in the world of Chassidus, nefesh, ruach, neshama, chai yechida are the 5 levels that everybody possesses. But the Tanya, which is the Torah Shebeksav of Chassidus, is not written in the language of Chassidus. It's written in the language of the Zohar. And the language of the Zohar, a person has either nefesh, or ruach, or also neshama. Big tzaddikim are in the madrega of ruach, in the madrega of neshama. Regular tzaddikim madrega of ruach. The rest of us have only nefesh. So you must appreciate that when you're learning Tanya, the same words mean different things because the Tanya is written in a different way. When it says here, every yid has nefesh, ruach, neshama means either nefesh or ruach or neshama. Lebneim achareim ad elam, to the children after them forever. Me'es spheres the kedusha, from the 10 spheres of holiness. I'm going to get to this in a moment. I want to pause right here. What's the Rebbe just say? Alter Rebbe said, you know how come we inherited feelings? Because Hashem gave a gift to the Aves. That's the answer. It's not our gift. It's their gift. The Aves were individual people, right? The Aves were individual people. They were a couple, a man and a woman. And you've heard this drasha from me 1,000 times. I always say the same speeches. The Torah that we learned, that we're going to get again in Mitzvah Hashem in a week from Monday on Chag HaShavuos, Nachamo, tells how to serve Hashem, but it also tells us the history of the world. But it doesn't tell us the history of the world per se. It tells us the history of the world in terms of the purpose of the world. It's not just a history book, it's a specific sefer that's called Sefer HaYosher, Sefer Bereishis, that addresses the history of the world vis-a-vis the purpose of the world. And what do we learn? We learn that the evolution of what's called the nation of God, Hashem's people, has 2 steps. Step number 1, individuals, Yechidim, individuals who are as close to perfect as a person could be. And step number 2, a family, a nation, which includes a plurality, a sach mention. Some are tzaddikim, some are beinanim, some are rashaim, some are good, some are average, some are no good, and collectively they make up the nation of God. The entire story of Bereshit, the beginning of Shmos, is the story of the birth of the Jewish nation in these 2 steps. Number 1, the Eibishter looked for a perfect couple, a perfect specimen. And I always tell you what the Gemara says about Babasre, that the Eibishter tests Eve. And in my understanding, Eve is a potential Abraham, a potential Avraham Avinu. And he gets Avraham Avinu, Matzosas, Lavavi, Nemel, Lefanach. Hashem gave him 10 tests, which is another Mishnah in the Pirkei Avos that we read yesterday. V'Amad Bekulon, he withstood all of the tests, and as such, him and his wife, his Rebbetzin, became the father of the Jewish people, but they're individuals. Later on, there's a whole story, a Maisa with 12 Shvatim, and going into Mitzrayim, and Golos Mitzrayim, and becoming a very, very large people. They come out of Mitzrayim, they come to Arsin, and they get the Torah. But now they're a plurality. They're not all tzaddikim. To the contrary, there are a couple of tzaddikim, right? And there's a lot of regular people. This is called the nation of God, the chosen nation. Has these 2 distinctive steps. It starts off with individual tzaddikim, and these tzaddikim, madrega of merkava. So the Eibush gave him a gift. What was the gift? What's the greatest gift you can give a person? What's the greatest gift you can give a person?
Gift of Thanksgiving.
The greatest gift you can give a person is, I will love your children like I love you. And not just your children, but your children's children, and your children's children's children. Ad, save, kol adedas. The greatest gift you can give a human being is say, I love you so much that whatever comes from you, even if it's rotten, I'm going to love it, because it's yours. In Chumash, it's called Birchas Hazeret, in Chazal. In other words, Avraham Avinu had a bris bein absarim, a covenant between the parts. Hashem gave him 2 promises. The first is Birchas Hazera, the blessing of seed, which means we're now almost 4,000 years since Avraham Avinu. Yeah, we're 3,300 and something. This Shavuos is going to be 3,333. L'cheilat Chaninyin, 3,333 years since the Eibusha gave us the Torah. But the Torah was given 500 years after Avraham Avinu was born. So you have to add, it's not 3,3, it's 3,833 since the birth of Avraham Avinu this year. It's almost 4,000 years ago. And we identify with him as if he's our father. There's not a nation on earth that has that kind of a longevity. A group of people that identify with a man who lived almost 4,000 years ago, considering how difficult the history has been, is a nes. It's one of the biggest nisim of all. The second bracha is Birchas Ha'aretz. Eretz Yisrael is going to continue to be the Jewish people's forever, and that's also happened, and it's also a pella, and it's also complicated, but I don't want to go into it. The vart of the Alter Rebbe is that it's not a matana the Eibishter gave us, it's a matana the Eibishter gave the others. The Eibishter gave our ancestors a gift that his children should be. The Eibishter is Ad Seiv Kol Adedis. How can a human being be born and have an inherent love for God without thinking about the Eibishter once or twice? We call that in our culture a neshama, a yechidish benefesh, and just because he's a Jew. What's so special about being a Jew? Nothing. But your parents, the elders ate it, Avraham Avinu. And that's the answer to the third question. By what process do we inherit love? Even though in convention love is not something you can inherit. You can inherit wealth, but you can't inherit love. The answer is we didn't inherit it. It was a gift that was given to the Yaves, that we should be the Eibishter's people forever. Ad Seiv Kol Adedis. That's the whole answer. That's it. Alter Rebbe answers it first, and again, my assumption is he answers it first because it takes him 2 lines. Done. Move on. Now that he answered the third question, which is how is it an inheritance? The Alter Rebbe proceeds to answer the first question. The first question is Sheidish Avos. Where does this come from? And the answer is going to be, as you'll see inside, it's connected to Chokhmah. But there's a critical word that I need to talk of first. And that word is the word Kedusha, holiness. You'll see this word in the next 10 lines, the word Kedusha appears at least 5 times. And I'm going to read inside. I'm continuing to read. Okay? So, I'm going back to where I started from, the period. Our ancestors were a chariot for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They merited. Hashem gave them a gift. Lahamshich, to bring down nefesh, ruach, or neshama, some spark of godliness. Lebneim achareim, their children after them, ad elam, forever. Me'eses sfiras the kedusha. And again, it doesn't mean from all 10. From one of the 10 sfiras of holiness. The key word is the word holiness. Sheba arba elameis, which is one of the 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, Asiyah. So a Yid has either a Nefesh, or a Ruach, or a Neshama, or from Atzilus, or from Bria, or from Yitzir, or from Asiyah, or from Chokhmah, or from Bina, and so on and so forth. But whatever kind of Yid you are, you have some kind of Neshama, which comes from some kind of world, and some kind of Sfira within that world, but the magic word, the constant is Kedusha. It's holy, it's Kedusha. Okay, l'chol echad v'yechad, to each individual, k'fi madrigose, based on his step, based on his level, meaning to say, based on where his neshama comes from, in the Elam Yisrael Yenim, from birth, or k'fi ma'isav, according to his actions. Now these 2 words, k'fi ma'isav, is very hard to understand, because what's k'fi ma'isav is not an inheritance. What's k'fi ma'isav, you earn. But the Alter Rebbe says that the behavior, the way a person lives, affects not just his conscious self, it somehow affects his subconscious. I don't have more to say on the subject because I don't know what it means. In other words, I'm not asking questions, I'm pointing out anomalies. Alter Rebbe says that even the Pintaliyid, which is Yerushalayim Yaveseinu, it's not something which we created for ourselves. We have it inherently. We have from the Aves, the actions of a person affect maybe not the level of the Avamas, but the degree of expression, whatever the case is. But right, so Kfi Madregose is who your neshama is. Kfi Maisa means how you're choosing to live your life. And he concludes, Valkol upon him at least. Afilu, Lekal, Shebekal, Bepeshit. So there's all kinds of Jews. Right, there's what some people call good Jews and bad Jews. And there are Jews who are Kal, Shebekal. They're apathetic. They have no guilt. They have no conscience. Pesha Yisrael doesn't only mean a person without guilt or conscience. Pesha Yisrael means a sinner. They'll make no difference. Nimshach bezivugam, when the Eibishter designs their neshama, their levusha, in the zivuk, zivuk means in the mix, in the blend, that neshama is created from, at the very least, nefesh, the malchus, the asiyah. Nefesh is the lowest level of the neshama. Malchus is the lowest sfira, and asiyah is the lowest world. So the Alter Rebbe Shehi, that nefesh, the malchus asiyah is Madrega hatachtena shebekedushas asiyah. The very lowest levels in the holiness of asiyah. It says there, it makes no difference whether a yid is a big tzaddik with a great powerful neshama and a great mind and a great heart and a great senses, and he's very devout, or a yid is a kalsha bakal mapeshi Yisrael. So obviously they're not living and serving Hashem in the same way. But in terms of the pintel yid, in terms of the idea that they're born with a love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is a gift that Hashem gave not to them, but to their ancestors, me'achas sitz, sheme'es sfiras kadeshes, whatever kind of neshama they have, it comes from the 10 holy sfiras. So ultimately, he kula mikula, it includes all the levels above and below itself. Gamei chochma d'asiyah, also chochma of asiyah. Shebetecha melubeshes chochma de malchus atzilus, which includes chochma in the world of atzilus. Shebetecha chochma d'atzilus, which includes the highest level of chochma in the highest world. Shabbat meir et ein seif baruch mamish, where the ein seif shines, as I will explain to you later. Probably, I'm imagining in 2 Sundays from today. Imagine next Sunday we don't have shir, it's out of Yom Tov. So we'll talk about chochma mitzvah Hashem next time. What I want to talk about today is the word kedusha. Where's the word kedusha mentioned? Chapter 6, Perek Vav. In Perek Vav, you have one of the most important ideas in Kabbalah and Hasidus, and at the same time, one of the most controversial, one of the most uncomfortable. The Alter Rebbe is talking about Sitra Achra. Sitra Achra means the other side in Aramaic, the other side, Tzad Achra. And the Alter Rebbe says, what does Sitra Achra mean? But Sitra Achra, if we were not sensitive, we would say Sitra Achra means evil. It means bad. The other side, not Kedusha. The more Hasidus you learn, the more you realize how sensitive this could be, how fine, how complex this could be. Okay? So the Alter Rebbe says, what does Sitra Achra mean? It means it's not Kedusha. What's he asserting? What's he arguing? Alter Rebbe is arguing. The most important and most basic argument in this is that when you're learning Kabbalah, when you're learning Sedus HaTorah, there is no neutral. There's no parav, there's no benign. In halacha and in life, there are good things and there are bad things, and then there are who cares things, right? Much of life is you can take it or leave it. There's things that you must do, there's things that you're not allowed to do, there's things that are good and there are things that are evil, and then there's things that are parav. That's true of halacha, it's true in Nigla. But in Kabbalah, in what I call Teda Bashamayim, as opposed to Teda Le Bashamayim, the Alter Rebbe asserts, if it's not Kedusha, it's the other side. There's no in between. If it's not Kedusha, it's the opposite of Kedusha, which is very, very unsettling if you think about it in realistic terms. Right? What I do is either Kedusha or Sitra Achara. Sitra Achara means bad. Nobody wants to be bad. It's very bad. Yeah? There's no gray. In halacha there is gray. In Torah as it's given on earth, Torah leiba shamayim, there's a huge area of gray. But Kabbalah is teaching us a higher madrege. The Tanya is written in that spirit, and in that spirit, so to speak, as you're saying, there's no gray. Now, what is the criteria? What's the criteria? If we are establishing that in the realm of Kabbalah there's no middle, if it's not this side, it's the opposite side, there's no center, so what are the two sides? So the Alter Rebbe says, Tzad HaKedusha, it's in page 20 in the Tanya, in the Yud Amid Beis, you can look it up. Tzad HaKedusha Eini Ela Masha Batla Yisbarach. The meaning of the word Kedusha is Bittul Tasha. The meaning of the word holy is subservient. Holy is not a relationship. Holy is a condition. Holy means I am subservient, I'm Batla HaKadosh Baruch. And Setra Achara means Eini Batla Yisbarach. It says to be the other side, you don't have to be bad, you don't have to be cruel, you have to be just not Batla. And like I said, this is a higher standard, but this is how it is. The meaning of the word Kedusha means something whose reality is Bittul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The true meaning of the word Bittul is that where my ego is, I took my ego out and I put Hashem's ego in that space. That's really what Bittul means. So Kedusha is Bittul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kedusha means Bittul HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the meaning of the word Klipa in Kabbalah is self-centricity. That's all. Any creation, the center of whose universe is self, is klipa. And by the way, that's the basic nature of every living thing. Being selfish is a prerequisite to surviving, to living, to existing, to thriving, to succeeding. right? And Teira calls it klipa.
Is it also separation? Separation from Hashem.
What is your question?
Because Kedusha is separate. Kadosh means...
Klipa is separate from Hashem. But the message of the Tanya is that to be separate from Hashem, you don't have to be bad. You have to just not be in a state of total service. That's the difficulty here, correct. Kedusha is batal to the Eibishter, meaning to say, the center of Kedusha is himself, the center of Kedusha is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the Eibishter. Which is a very high level. In other words, something which is Kaddish is not serving Hashem. It's in a state of service. Meaning the definition of Kedusha is, I haven't done anything to achieve this. This is my inherent condition. My inherent condition is, I exist to serve the Eibishter. I'm trying to avoid bringing up psychology, right? What is the center of a person? So if a person is a behemoth, a person is an animal, a conventional person, the center of a person is self. This man, this Professor Frankl, this psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, he was in Auschwitz. And when he came out of Auschwitz, he disagreed with what was considered a Freudian idea. I know a psychiatrist who I talk to, who explained these things to me, and he gets very upset when you speak little of Freud, people don't understand him, whatever. But what was the whole word? Human beings were... Psychiatry is a new field. It's one of the newest sciences, ironically. And in the early stages of understanding a person, they essentially defined a person as a more sophisticated animal. What's an animal? Animals about me, about self. The question is, how sophisticated is self? But it's self. He was in the camps, Frankl, and he was a disciple. He was a psychiatrist. He believed in this whole philosophy of humanity, and he watched people survive in ways that completely exceeded the laws of self-centricity. In other words, he saw people survive that could not possibly be selfish enough to survive. There's not enough self to survive. And he concluded, the phrase in English is, an external locus of control means that my identity is defined by something outside of me, bigger than me. And he observed that people who had that had an ability to survive, that people who didn't have it did not have it. And he said a human being is not an animal. There is within a human being an inherent sense of self that's bigger than self, which is the Eibishter. He was a psychiatrist. He didn't use the word God at all. He used the word meaning, purpose, something higher. But this is, so to speak, a psychological indication towards the concept of a neshama. And the meaning of a neshama means not only that life is metaphysical rather than physical, but that it serves Hashem. And that's what Kedusha means. Kedusha means something which is inherently batal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the word Kedusha means. So the Alter Rebbe asserts every Jew has a soul. And in the soul of every Jew there is Chochmah. And in the Chochmah of every Jew there is Kedusha. It makes a difference in where it comes. Some Jews come from higher worlds, some Jews from lower worlds. There's all kinds of Yidden. So where their lives play out, they're not all the same. But they share the Nekuda of Kedusha, and the Nekuda of Kedusha is a bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now let me give you a mashal for this. I'm going to give you a mashal for this. The mashal is a mashal. I want to also tell you the nimshal, and when you'll hear the nimshal, you'll appreciate the mashal a little bit more. The mashal is actually brought in Tanya from Kabbalah, but the mashal by itself doesn't resonate. In other words, don't ask me questions after the mashal. Wait till I give you the nimshal, and then you'll be able to see what the significance of the mashal. If you have a house with many, many floors, and there's no staircases, and in the center of the home there's a column, there's an amud, but the column is hollow. It's not a full pole, it's empty. If the column is hollow, there are no stories. There's no higher levels, there's no lower levels. The Eibishter creates many worlds. Each world is separate from every other world, and you cannot trespass. You cannot go from a world to a world. But in the center of those worlds, there's Kedusha. The Kedusha exists in all the worlds. And the Kedusha that exists in the higher world is higher than the Kedusha that exists in the lower world. And the Kedusha that exists in the lower world is higher than the Kedusha that exists in the world lower than itself. But there's no separations. Even though there's a higher Kedusha and a lower Kedusha, it doesn't matter. Meaning to say, there's a Kedusha which is more intense, and there's a Kedusha which is less intense, but more intense Kedusha, less intense Kedusha, it shares the property of Kedusha. And what does Kedusha mean? Inherently batal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is the mashal. This is the mashal. What is the nimshal? The nimshal is as follows. The nimshal made a world. Worlds are gigantic places. And worlds are like people. If you want to understand the world, you have to understand the person. In the center of each world, it's the Tanya of these days. It's the Tanya of these days, Perek Nun Beis. The center of each world is the Beis HaMikdash. And in the human experience, it's the brain. The brain of a person is his sanctuary. Inside the brain rests the neshama. And the neshama distributes life to the whole person. So the Alter Rebbe asserts, every world has a center. The center of the world is the Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash, there's the Shechina. And as you know, the mysticism, when you have the Shechina, above the Shechina, you have HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shechina sits, and Kedusha hovers. That's how it's understood. When the Shechina sits on his chair, the Kedusha hovers above the chair. So the Alter Rebbe argues there's many worlds. Each world is separated from the other world. You cannot go from a world to a world. But in the center of each world there's a Beis HaMikdash, there's a sanctuary, there's a brain. And the brain of all the worlds are connected. And in the mashal of a human being, the neshama rests in our brain. From the brain, life is distributed to the entire person, to the heart, to the lungs, to the spleen, to the kidneys, to the arms, to the legs, to the fingers, to the toes, to the hair, to the skin, to the nails. But the brain is where the neshama sits. Meaning to say, the brain's connection to the neshama is different than the rest of the body's connection to the neshama. The rest of the body lives from the neshama, but there's a separation. The brain is connected to the neshama, and the brain is what the neshama wishes for it to be, which is serving what the neshama is. So this is how the worlds work. The center of each world is a Beis HaMikdash. It's a sanctuary, it's a brain. And the Shechina sits in the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash has no doors. The physical Beis HaMikdash has doors. The spiritual Beis HaMikdash have no doors, only windows. And the light goes from the Beis HaMikdash to the world to give life to the creations of that world. But there's a separation. The worlds are called Levushim, they're called Achos, whatever fancy names you want to use, they're not Kedusha. I don't want to say Klipa because that'll make people nervous, but they're not Kedusha. The Beis HaMikdash, the sanctuary, the center, is Kedusha. So you have 4 worlds, or 5, Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiyah. In the center of each of these worlds there's a Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash the Shechina sits, like it says in the Chitas of yesterday and today and tomorrow. Above the Shechina the Kedusha hovers. If you can get inside that Beis HaMikdash, the separation between one world and another world is not real. If you're not inside the Beis HaMikdash, the separation between one world and another world is absolute. So now, in the spiritual worlds, right, there are people and animals. I don't want to spend the whole forever on this. People and animals means malachim and neshamas. Malachim are compared to animals, Yidden are compared to people, whatever the mysticism is. They don't live in the Beis HaMikdash. They're in the world. But a Yid has a spark of Kedusha, and a Malach doesn't. A Malach of Elam Abriya is a lot more sophisticated than me, and he looks a lot more religious than me, but his devoutness is based on where he is as much as on who he is. Again, he's not Kedusha. I don't want to use the word. I told you it's not comfortable. It's not Kedusha. The lowest Jew has a spark of Kedusha, meaning he has a spark from what's inside the Beis HaMikdash. The biggest Malach, even Malach and Neil Matzilis, this is a little bit complicated, lives in the Yecholis, does not have a spark of Kedusha. Because we have a spark of Kedusha, and we have this spark of Kedusha not because of who we are, but because we inherited from our ancestors, from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. This spark makes every Jew have a love for God, even if he doesn't know it. That's such Ava Misateres. Why do I have a hidden? How can I have a relationship with a God that I don't know? How can I have a relationship with a God with whom I don't believe in? How can I have a relationship with a God who I spend my entire life denying? And the answer is, it's in your subconscious. It's called Kedusha. I'll get to you in a second. It's a spark of holiness which every person has from the essence spheres of Kedusha. Now what I want you to appreciate here, this is already a Kabbalistic idea. We learn Kabbalah very pseudo-intellectually, but you don't learn it properly. Yeah? Esses Sfiris is not a world. Just like a person is not a brain. The brain is the sanctuary of the human being. That's the Esses Sfiris. The Esses Sfiris and Atzilus are Kedusha. The Esses Sfiris and Asiya are Kedusha. The Esses Sfiris and Yetzira are Kedusha. The Esses Sfiris and Asiya are Kedusha. The Esses Sfiris and Asiya Hagashmias are Kedusha. That's where the Eibishter rests. A world is like a body. A brain by itself is not very useful unless it sits in a brain case, which is attached to a head, which has eyes and ears and a nose and a mouth and tongue and so on, and arms and legs and fingers and toes and everything that makes us be who we are. Our center, our base, our mikdash, this is our Esses Sfiris. Esses Sfiris that you learn about all the time is not a whole person. It's the sanctuary of the person. It's the place where Kedusha could exist, and by a Yid, in a hidden way, it naturally exists. So the Alter Rebbe's assertion is all kinds of people. Every Yid was given a gift of Kedusha. It's not always the same gift. People experience this Kedusha in many, many different worlds, but the gift of Kedusha that every Yid experiences gives him or her the Ava Musteps. I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'll let you speak, and then we're going to break. The Beis HaMikdash has been destroyed, which means mystically this world doesn't have a head. Elam Hazeh, this physical earth, used to have a temple. In that physical place, the Shekhinah sat and the Kedusha hovered, and the result of this was that in this world you saw the hand of God more directly. The times of the Beis HaMikdash, Hashgacha Pratis was much easier to see because Hashem was present on the level of this earth, and his influence on the world was much more direct. And basically there's three levels. There's Yerushalayim, which corresponds to Elam HaBriya. There's Eretz Yisrael, which corresponds to Elam HaYetzira. And there's the rest of the world, which corresponds to Elam HaAsiya. When the Eibishter was present in the physical Beis HaMikdash, the entire world experienced Hashem more directly and was able to and was expected to respond to that presence more directly. We're on life support. In Zman HaGolus, we're living from the Beis HaMikdash in Asiya Ruchnis. It's long distance. If there would be no Beis HaMikdash, there'd be no world. But we're living from a Beis HaMikdash in a different world. And that's why, in Golus it's chaotic. The order that you would expect to see in a world which is governed by a master is much more complicated, is much less evident, because the life which is sustaining this world is someplace else. So what did we learn today? I taught you one idea. Everything else is review. Kedusha. The Alter Rebbe says in Perek Vav in chapter 6, Kedusha means batel etzei yisbarach, an inherent bittul ta'akadosh baruch. Where is Kedusha? In nefesh, ruach, neshama, of Esses Sfiris, the Kedusha. Every world has a center. The center is the Beis HaMikdash, is the brain. That center has Esses Sfiris, Keser, Chochma, Bina, Chesed, Yevurah, Teferes, Netzach, Heg, Yesed, Malchus. Inherent in all of that is Chochma. In that Chochma there is Ein Sof, there's Kedusha. We live outside the Beis HaMikdash. We live in the worlds, just like Malachim do. But we were given a spark. That's the point. Every year there's a spark of Kedusha, and as a result of the spark of Kedusha, there's a concept, what Alter Rebbe calls in chapter 6, Batel B'Koyach. I don't know, but I have bittul. I don't know, and I love. This is unique to a Yiddish neshama, because the Yiddish neshama was designed to have this spark of Kedusha. These are ideas that I taught you earlier. But cloud, there's two possibilities. You're either a lakus or you're a nivra. You're either godliness or you're creation. Can't be both. A neshama is called a lakus shenasa nivra. How godliness becomes a creation. Meaning on the outside you don't see the Kedusha. But the potential, the Kedusha is always present. It's never ever lost. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. It was beautiful. Just one thing, when we talk about Hashem gave us this gift of Kedusha, it's a choice. The Yid has a choice. Come closer to Hashem or not. We have Tzelek Elohim as a choice. It's not guaranteed. You have to work on it.
May I disagree?
Well, that's the whole concept of Baal Tshuva. So you come closer to Hashem as a choice. You have that love, a hint of the yid is always there. But it's not always exercised until you've made the choice.
I have to be honest with you. I don't know you. I know me a little bit. So I cannot speak for you. But many people who have done tshuva will tell you that they have no idea where the tshuva came from.
But that was a choice. My point is it was a choice. They made a conscious choice. It wasn't like I wake up in the morning and it comes natural. It's a constant, it's a constant struggle.
Constant.
And
But the first moment,
tshuva,
the first moment, after the first moment, you're right, but the first moment,
What I'm saying is,
I'm asking you a question. The first moment of tshuva is a choice or it's a gift from God?
I can't even point out the time when it happened. It's a whole series of events.
Of course.
Can't say, I don't think anybody can say, woke up and I had this inspiration to make a tshuva. I don't know anybody.
All the Balei Tshuva that I have spoken to tell me that story.
Is that?
It starts with Avram Avinu. I have a whole lumdus on this. It starts, who's the first Jew? The answer to the question is, it depends how. In terms of neshama, the first Jew is Avram Avinu. But you see, here's the complication. The Shvatim have a din of Ben Neach. It's weird. The Avis were Yidden, their children were Bnei Neach. Till Matan Torah. And the Chiddush of Matan Torah is a Jew in the goof, the body, as opposed to the soul. So Avraham Avinu is the first Jew as far as neshama. Now that itself needs analysis, needs to be explained.
And by the way, speaking about Avraham Avinu, he was looking for Hashem. So that's a choice.
You're right.
But
we are his children.
But yes, but that's, he had a potential, he has a loft in neshama, and he chose to look for Hashem. That's what I'm trying to say.
I know, and Chassidus says,
you take for granted and it's always happening.
Taking for granted is a bad idea, Baklal. But Chassidus says, his choice we inherit. We don't have to make the same choice he made.
He was a trailblazer. He
Right.
made it easier for us.
But he didn't only trailblaze.
But it's still a choice.
Okay, we're disagreeing. I'm just letting you know.
We agree to disagree.
Yes, okay.
Thank you so much.
God, thank you for coming.